So what we got here is a Rustler slash Bandit 2-wheel drive. I run a Bandit body on it, but it's got the Rustler A-arms and stuff. I think it started life as a Bandit. I don't know. I bought it used as a roller. I put all the electronics on it. I got a quick run 10BL 120, 3S ESC, and a quick run 3660 motor that runs 3150 kV. So what the issue is, I hit the throttle here and we have a click. Same thing in reverse. So sounds even worse when it's under power. I was just holding one wheel and I got, I think, 100,000 diff fluid in that rear diff, so I just put some load on it and it sounds even worse under load. So we are going to tear into this thing so we can figure out what's going on. Problem is, I suspect that it's in the transmission. And the transmission on these 2-wheel drive 1/10 scale cars is you got to take the whole rear end apart to get to it. So let's get started with that. First, I'm just going to go ahead and take the back wheels off. If you take off the shock tower, 4 bolts from the shock tower, 2 in the chassis, 2 in the transmission, and then the 2 bolts that attach the rear arms to the chassis. I guess you would call those the, not necessarily bolts, but pins would be a more accurate description for them. We'll take those off, not with that screwdriver because it sucks. You know what, before we do that, let's take this wheelie bar off because I know if I don't, it's just going to get in the way and it's going to be a pain. So 4 bolts, real quick like. There we go. Now we can get to those without a bunch of grief. So you can see what's going on here. I'm just going, taking those out. Basically, those only have a really coarse thread right at the beginning. Right there, there's a really coarse thread. It just threads into that part of the A-arm. So we'll get both of those out. And that one's not going to come out till I get the motor out, which I got to take the motor out anyway, so might as well go ahead and roll with that. So because of the size of this pinion gear, I have to take it off first so the motor will fit through the motor mount plate hole. So I just pop that loose with the grub screw, that comes right off, and then I'm going to just pop those back in the motor, a couple of threads, so I don't lose them. And so at the end of this, when I have this whole thing taken apart, I don't have a big pile of bolts and screws that I don't know where they go. I could probably figure it out eventually, but save yourself some headache by just putting them back in the hole they came in. Sometimes these are a pain to get out, so I just grab them with some pliers give them a little bit of a twist, pull straight out. All right, so that's those 2 pins that hold the A-arms in place. So those A-arms will come loose, just like that. Now we have 4 bolts that hold the shock tower on. And then basically the entire rear suspension will pop right off. I mentioned this thing started life as a Rustler, or excuse me, a Bandit. So that's why some of the screws are Phillips and some of them are hexes. I've traded out most everything for hexes. But there's some places there's still those old Phillips head screws that came on the Bandit. I'm pretty sure it was an XL5. It wasn't even a VXL. All right, so whole rear suspension assembly comes out just like that as one piece. You can see my hodgepodge rear spoiler there. You know, that's how it was like that when I got it. So don't come for me. I'm gonna pop those back in the holes so again we don't lose them. It's just good practice. And put that somewhere out of my face. All right, next. So you notice I went ahead and just pulled the whole thing out, and the axles just pulled right off. These are still the stock axles. Oh wow, you can hear that click in there. Something is broken. Oh yeah, there's some gears grinding in there, for sure, no doubt. All right, before we get too much further, I'm gonna go ahead and take this guy off. That's the, go ahead and pull the whole slipper clutch assembly off. Set all of it to the side. Don't lose that little pin. So, come here. Take a look at this here. That little pin right there. Right there. Right there. Right there. You don't want to lose that. That's the pin that basically it goes on the back of the slipper clutch here in that slot. It goes right through the transmission output shaft right there, that hole closest to the transmission. I think these, Traxxas reuses this part. I think it's also used on the Slash. Don't quote me on that. But that's why it has 2 holes. Depending on what you're running and what kind of transmission you're running, that's why it has 2 different holes. But at any rate, that tiny little pin right there is basically what transfers the torque from your output shaft to the back of your slipper clutch. So I'm gonna drop that in there. I'll try real hard not to lose it. And put you back over here where you belong. All right. So that's the slipper clutch assembly with the spur gear. We'll put all that over there out of the way with the rest of our parts. And you can still hear that thing clicking. All right. Next step, I'm going to go ahead and take the whole transmission off, and then we'll move the chassis out of the way and just work with the transmission. So the transmission, this is the aftermarket RPM transmission that has the external AR mounts. It's still held in the same way as the stock transmission with the 1, 2, 3, 4 M4 countersink screws and the 2 smaller countersink screws. So we'll get those pulled out. But you notice those were those were different colors, and they're also different. Some of them were hexes, some of them were Phillips head. The reason for that is the Phillips head hardware was the stock hardware that the truck came with. Actually, I don't need to remove that one. And the black hardware came with the RPM transmission because they use a different mounting for these little for these guys here. So you don't have to take out all 6. You only have to take out, if you have the RPM transmission with the separate parts here, you only have to take out the 2 down here and the 2 up there, because those are the only ones that actually hold the transmission in place. These 2 and these 2. So we got the transmission taken off of the chassis. We're going to throw the chassis out of the way. Lord knows I don't need any more junk on this workbench. Seems like I would clean it up, but nah. All right, so these bolts, these 4 right here, all are what was holding the transmission on. Put this over here with my pile of hardware. I could do the thing that I was talking about before by putting it back in the hole so I could keep up with everything, but we're gonna skip that this time. I follow my own rules most of the time, not all the time. So this also has the RPM wheelie bar mount. So we're gonna take that off first. Little screws in there for that half of that. And then there's still 3 more screws that I have to take out to get the rest of that off. And those screws not only hold the RPM wheelie bar mount in place, they also help to hold the transmission together. So if I wasn't using this, I would still have 3 screws there I had to take out. So then that's all the pieces of that. Let's go ahead and get these half shafts off. I mentioned earlier that I went ahead and just snatched them off and let them come apart from their from the other part of the shaft. The way you do that, there's a little grub screw. Let's see if I can get this close so you can see it. The little grub screw right there. I think it's a 1.5 millimeter. You take it out. And I guess I shouldn't call it a grub screw because it's a grub screw and it's a pin. If you can see, oh my God, David, get it in the field of view. There we go. If you could see that there, it's a grub screw and a pin, and it actually passes all the way through the shaft and through the output shaft of the transmission itself. So not only does this thing snap on here and it has flats on either side of that output shaft, it also has that grub screw with the end on it that goes through there to make sure that we get good transfer of torque and not have to worry about that slipping. So this is one of those things that you really don't want to lose. It holds your axle onto your output shaft, and I don't have any of these laying around. They're kind of a specialty screw. So I'm gonna throw that back into the half shaft and thread it in there a couple of threads so it doesn't walk away on my incredibly messy workbench here. So all right, so still got a few bolts to take out. First I'm gonna take off the motor mount plate. They all come off with a 2 millimeter. These would also be used for mounting a dust cover. I don't run a dust cover. I probably should, but I don't. I'm not going to either. And you can't make me. All right. So, motor mount plate. This is part of why I went with the RPM transmission, because it has the RPM transmission case, because it has a separate motor mount plate that is aluminum, helps dissipate some of the heat from the motor. The stock one is it's plastic and it's integrated into the transmission case. So if something happens to it, you got to replace the whole transmission case. Whereas this one, I'm pretty sure I can buy just this from RPM if I wanted to. I know those A-arm mounts, you can buy just the A-arm mounts. Whereas the stock transmission, those A-arm mounts are integrated into the transmission case. So if you break one, you have to replace the whole transmission case, which is why I started doing this on my Bandits and Rustlers to begin with, because I broke one of those and I was like, well, that's the whole transmission case. I got to replace the whole thing. And then I learned about the RPM housing. I really like RPM stuff. There's better stuff out there, yes, but you know, for the price, I really like their stuff. I've had pretty good luck with it. Okay, so now we're down to 2 more bolts on this transmission housing. This one and this one. Okay, so now the transmission is ready to come apart. It's in 2 pieces, you know, kind of like a clamshell. So we're just going to carefully pull them apart and see what we have going on in here. So, I'm looking closely. I think I found the issue. So that on the tip of my finger is a tooth from a gear. There's more to this story. So earlier today, I tore into this transmission because it was making a noise. And what I found was the idler gear, this gear right here, was missing about 3 teeth. Apparently, one of these teeth was laying down in the bottom of the transmission case. It got, oh, hang on, that's not the issue. Never mind, forget everything I just said. Let's pull this guy out. That is the issue. If I can get it in the field of view. That's the issue. Look at that. 1, 2, 3 teeth missing on the differential. Oh, that sucks. That really sucks. I didn't notice when I tore that transmission open earlier today. This is why you should take a really close look at things when you have them taken apart. This is the second time I've tore this transmission down today because I failed to notice this the first time I tore it apart. What I did notice was this idler gear. That's what I was talking about just a minute ago. This idler gear was also missing some teeth. So I replaced it with another one that I had. And put everything back together thinking, oh, I fixed the problem. It was an idler gear that was missing 3 teeth. And then that's what I noticed when I pulled this transmission open, is that one of those teeth, this guy right here, was sitting on the differential. But the true issue is right there. Those teeth are bad. That sucks. My differential is torn up. So, I gotta decide what I'm gonna do. Alright, well, that's it for now. Tune back in. I will, once I decide what we're gonna do, I will walk through the process of replacing the differential, putting everything back together, and getting us back out on the road.